Hey, good morning. I think I saw that several of you are already here. And I just wanted to first off say thank you for your flexibility with doing class this way today. I have one of my kiddos came down with a stomach bug. And so this is my best solution for today. The good news is it'll give you some extra time to work on your topic proposal just because we will not use the full hour and 15 minutes today. I actually think YouTube will cut me off at the 40-minute mark. I'm not positive about that, but I think that may happen. So I would say I would actually open this video up in YouTube because you'll see a comment bar over here in the side. I'm going to type in a little note right here. You can see I just said welcome. So if you have questions as we're going along, feel free to type those questions in. I will try and answer those as we go. If I have to do some follow-up after the live class online, I will do that. Trying to think. So normally I start class just with, questions, see if you have any questions, see if you have any issues. Last Thursday, you should have turned in your second realm chart. I am going to be reviewing those, and you should get a grade back on those by Thursday. And then then this Thursday, by 11:59 p.m., your topic proposal is due for your definition essay. This is a really important step. You need to make sure that gets completed. Just saying hi to a couple of people who are chatting in the comments. It's good to see y'all here and interacting. So if you remember on Thursday, I asked you all over the weekend to really start honing in on and settling on what word you were going to use for your definition paper. So whatever idea you're on right now, if you fully landed the plane and you're 100% confident, or you're like, I still don't know, I'd love to see it in the comments. So what word or phrase are you planning to define and work with? Having that picked out is going to help you substantially this week as we're talking in class, because then you will be able to do brainstorming and planning and applying ideas and strategies that we're going to be discussing together today and then again on Thursday. So I am going to do a little bit of, I'm going to mix things up just a little bit with how if you looked at the assignment schedule, it says today that we're talking about I Want a Wife and Homeless, which are two articles from our book, which we will touch on those. And then Thursday is about how to put an essay together. What are the different pieces? We're going to do a little bit of both of that today and then continue that conversation on Thursday. If you have questions about your topic proposal, please put those again in the comments. Let me know. You should be working on them. You should have a word. You should be starting to answer those topic proposal questions. In fact, if you had a rough draft of your topic proposal done by Thursday's class, that would be ideal, because then you'll know what questions you have, what issues you're running into, and we can troubleshoot those in class. So that would really be my recommendation. One thing you'll definitely want to do is check out on Canvas. If you go into the modules, there are 3 or 4 documents, and they all have the word grit in them. And those are just some sample documents that I created that can give you a base point to work from as you're creating your own documents. Because I know sometimes the first time you're creating a topic proposal, if you've never done that before, it may feel a little bit overwhelming, but you've got my sample to go by there on Canvas. So you can check that out just to kind of get your wheels turning. A couple of you had asked me at the end of class on Thursday, with the topic proposal, there are how many? 12 questions, 9 to 12 questions. If you have to write those answers in an essay form? And the answer is no. I'm totally fine with you simply putting number 1 and writing the answer to question number 1, as long as it's in a complete sentence. Again, I want you writing in complete sentences, we're not text messaging, we're not doing tweets, we're actually using complete sentences. So just make sure you're doing that. and answer the questions as best you can. Now, I'm going to encourage you, just like with the realm charts that you all have done, give an answer. So you make an observation, you give an insight, you give an answer to the question, but then you also provide the rationale. You give some explanation to your answer, you give some evidence for your answer, you give specific details. So you've only really answered half of the question if you just give the answer without the explanation. So let me hop over. You'll still see me, but I'm going to be looking at something else on my computer screen. For example, looking at my grit topic proposal. Number 2, who is your audience and why is this an important issue to them? So I wrote, my audience is the Rambler readers, and the issue of grit is important to them because college is a challenging season in life where expectations and demands are high, and you often feel like you're running on fumes and just need to get through it. All right, so it's more than just saying, hey, my audience are college students and they're stressed. There's actually some detail provided along with that answer. So the more detailed you are, the better. And here's the backside benefit to being more detailed in your responses. You can actually use the content you're writing in your topic proposal in your essay. So I think I've mentioned this before, that the assignments that I've created leading up to your actual essays are building into your essay. So the more detailed your answers are, the more you write in response, you're front loading that writing process. And I always am a big advocate for that and think it's really important to do. And so I would encourage you to do that. Not just because you're going to earn a higher grade on your topic proposal if you do that, though that is probably true, but also because you are working from a point of abundance when it comes to your writing. So be as detailed as you can in those. And if you find that you're having a hard time answering those questions, it's probably an indication that you need to go back and do some more brainstorming. So maybe you could do some more free writing where you're kind of outside the strings of those questions and you're just doing that brain dump like what we practiced in class. Maybe you could try writing a brief outline. Or a list of major ideas, or you could try doing a cluster diagram where you write your word in the middle of your paper and then you play the word association game and all the words and ideas that come to you. So I just kind of use that as a benchmark, that if you're struggling with writing the answers to your topic proposal in a detailed, coherent, logical way, it's probably because you haven't spent enough time in the brainstorming process, and you're going to want to do that. So again, as we're chatting, as I'm chatting, if you want to drop, I would love for you all to drop in the comments what word or phrase you're going to be defining for your paper. Hold on just a minute. Not yet. Not yet. Okay. When Frozen is done, I'll be ready. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. That's my daughter. She wants me to paint her fingernails, which I told her we would do when I was done with class.
I'm going to do it right now.
Okay. But sit here at the table, please.
Can you open it for me?
Can. So just continue to work on that. Get started on it. Do some work on it before you come to class on Thursday, so that you know what questions you have and you know what help you need, because we can set some time aside in class to do that. Okay. So 2 of the...
I can't.
I know I can't get it open either. After I'm done, okay? Thank you. Ainsley, I can't open it right now.
Open it.
I need you to go. I need you to go watch your movie.
No, open it.
Do you need to click down?
No.
Okay, then please go watch your movie.
No.
And then we'll do this. If you don't go do that right now, I'm not going to do this afterwards. The only way we're going to paint your fingernails is if you go watch your movie. Okay. Later. Let's see. Let's see. I'll be back with you guys in just a minute.
Okay. What are you?
You can go look at pictures, but I need you to go do that in the living room.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, work on those topic proposals. And feel free to send me an email too. Yeah, exactly. Thank y'all for bearing with me as I'm trying to pull some double duty this morning and do you guys some due diligence. And anyhow, so all right, keep working on those topic proposals. Email me if you want to have some interaction, if you're getting stuck or need some help kind of moving forward with that.
Mom, there's you got a stage.
I told you need to go to the living room, okay?
There's your set stage.
I will be right back. Okay. Come on. Okay. Okay. As you might know, picking your word or your phrase for your definition papers may be a little bit challenging, but that's really only half the battle. The other thing you have to figure out is the relevance or significance of writing about it. So it's not just enough to pick a word that you're interested in. There actually has to be some relevance for your audience. And you have to be able to articulate that, because that's how your paper is going to have a thesis. That's how it's going to have an argument, because a thesis is literally just two pieces. It's a sentence that identifies the topic, what you're talking about, and gives your perspective on it. So you need to be able to do both of those pieces. And let's talk just briefly about the two articles that I asked you all to read. 502, I believe, is where Judy Brady's I Want a Wife. That's where her article starts. I don't know how, in the comments, I'd love to hear you tell me what were your thoughts. How did that article hit you? How did you interact with it? How did you respond to it? Because remember, when we're reading, number one, we should be annotating, because that's going to then lead us to number two, which is responding and engaging in conversation. And that's the whole point of academic writing. It's to engage in conversation. So I don't know if you picked up on this or not, but her stance is ironic. She's being sarcastic at the end, especially if you look at page 504. She said, "Who wouldn't want a wife?" And it's a genuine question, but it's one that has some sarcasm and some irony behind it, because she's not saying, "Wow, how amazing that a wife would do all of these things," but rather, "My goodness, how unrealistic might all these expectations be?" So as I read this, and if you remember back at the beginning, it says that this was published back in 1972. So I know that there are some of us in the class who may have already been around when this was published. And so you could probably offer a really interesting perspective on what was the role of a wife like then versus what it is like now. So a comparison and a contrast. Or as you look at your own mother, did your own mom fit the descriptions and the definitions and the illustrations that Judy Brady gives in this article? Or are there significant differences between how your mom was a mother and how you saw your mom being a wife versus how maybe you're in that role, or you see maybe a sister or a friend in that role now? So remember, comparison and contrast is one of those strategies we can make as in a definition paper. And comparison and contrast is really helpful when you're trying to give a new perspective or explain a new word to an audience, because you're taking something they might be familiar with and comparing it or contrasting it to something they're less familiar with. And so it kind of helps them bridge the gap between those two. So if hopefully you've got some paper there next to you. And I would just write yourself a little note that says, how does my topic compare or contrast to how do the different views on my word, my idea, my phrase, whatever I'm writing my definition paper on, how do they compare and contrast? Some of you may have read Brady's article and thought you don't agree at all with her assessment or her definition or her perspective on what it means to be a wife. And again, that's good, because that's how we know that this article is serving its purpose, which is to engage the conversation about the role of a wife in culture. And again, remember the context. This was written in 1972, and so things probably look different. But another good question would be, how different do they look now? Are they different enough? Or is Brady's argument, is her idea still true and relevant? Do we have unrealistic expectations of women, their role as a wife? Is that the healthiest interaction or role in a marriage to play? And then obviously, because we're Christians and we have a specific worldview and way that we understand the world, how does Brady's understanding of a wife and her critique of that, how does our own Christian worldview play into that? How does our Christian worldview inform or influence how we understand Brady's perspective and then our own perspective? So you might notice that I'm just asking you a lot of questions, and I'm not necessarily giving you a lot of answers. So if you remember from class last week, that's one of the things I talked about. I said, listen, I'm much more concerned that you're able to ask good questions than to have the right answers. Because if you're not starting with good questions, your answers nobody's going to care about. And asking good questions really shows critical engagement with what you're talking about. So maybe, hopefully, as I was working through and listing out some of those questions, you were writing those down. That would be step number one. You would be adding your own questions. Remember the question category from the realm chart? That's one of the most important moves you can make when you are rhetorically analyzing something you're reading. And anytime you annotate, you engage, you do a realm analysis, all of that is what I mean when I say that you're doing a rhetorical analysis. You're looking at the context, you're looking at the means of persuasion to understand and to engage. So, Judy Brady defined a wife as she understood its social, cultural role in 1972 America. Now, she didn't do it just because it was a term that interested her. She had a why. She had a reason for writing that. So this was her purpose. This was, if you want to think about it in terms of the realm chart, this was her motivation. What was she hoping to accomplish? Why was she doing it? Why would her audience care about it? All of those should inform the thesis or the main argument of this piece. And so what I want you to be brainstorming and thinking about between now and Thursday, and jot this down, is, what is her argument? Does she ever come right out and say explicitly what her argument is, like why she's writing this definition, or is it implied? And if it's implied, what is she implying about being a wife in 1970s America? And what does she think may need to be different? Okay. That's the two pieces, and I'm going to need to plug my computer in. So I'll finish this thought, and then I'm going to go get my cord. So she has those two pieces. Yes, she's defining, and we see it all throughout. She talks about the duties, the responsibilities, the actions, all of the things that the wife does to run and manage the home. But it's not just a list. There's a tone in which she is presenting that information. There are word choices she's making that give us the context for understanding her, the irony and the sarcasm that she is using. And the tone and the style there are a big indication of her purpose and her meaning and what she wants her audience to think and do after reading it. So let's say I had a conversation with one of you at the end of class last week, and the question, and you said, well, can I define what a certain sport is for my definition paper? And I said, yeah, I've had students do that before, and that's fine. But you have to be able to tell me why that's an important academic definition for us to consider. Why should your audience care? What difference is it going to make if you define that? Because if the difference is, oh, it's just interesting or entertaining, that's really not the value of academic writing. The value of academic writing is to engage conversations. So what important conversation is your definition going to engage? Now, let me go get my power cord so we don't run out, so I don't lose my computer, and we'll continue our conversation. Yeah. What, baby?
You just go here again. Then you can send my phone now?
Yes. Okay. Let's see. Go down. There we go. Okay. I'm not going to lose you all now. So if YouTube holds me to this 40-minute time limit, then we've got about 20 more minutes. So just to recap where I stopped a minute ago, I want you to, for yourself, think about the word that you're going to be defining and for your definition paper and its significance or importance and how it's going to engage a cultural conversation, an academic conversation that other people are having and that they care about. Okay? All right, so let's then also look at homeless, which I think starts on 510, starts on 510. And this was one by Anna Quinlan. This is one of my favorite ones. I use this article every semester. I just think it's particularly well written and her perspective is really interesting. So again, we have Quinlan defining the concept of homeless, what does it mean for somebody to be homeless? And in a lot of ways, she's redefining this word because she says we're so focused typically on just the concept of homelessness. We talk about, oh, how are we going to help the homeless? What are we going to do about homelessness? That we miss the fact that there are actual individuals affected by this social issue. And that if we could, instead of trying to solve the whole big problem, if we could just look at individuals, if we could look at their specific needs, we could deal with it on an individual one-by-one basis, then that would be more effective. So you can see, is homelessness something she cares about? Absolutely. Are people who are without a home somebody she cares about? Yes.
I'm riding a ladybug and I was a baby.
I see that.
And Rick was a little kid,
Yep.
and Rick was a big kid.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
You need to go here again.
okay, just a minute, please. So she cares about that. So she wants to write about it because it's an issue she's encountered, she's experienced, she has some personal lived experience with. But there's also, she's tying it to a bigger conversation, a bigger so what, a bigger, hey, here's the point in writing this. We need to reconsider how we are addressing this. So there's her argument. When you're writing your definition paper, it's not just, I'm going to define sports, or I'm going to define grit, or I'm going to define being an older sister, whatever you've chosen. It's, we have to understand what it means to be an older sister, because you need that because clause, that phrase that says, this is why it's important. This is why you need to listen to me. This is what's happening with this that's problematic, or this is where people are lacking understanding. So if you were to go back and look, for example, at my topic proposal for the grit essay that I wrote, the issue, my argument was, we need to understand how grit can actually have a negative effect on us so that we can cultivate the fruit of the Spirit in our lives so that we have healthy relationships, right? So there's the argument. If we don't understand the negative effects of grit and how it affects our lives and relationships, then our relationships might suffer. So we got to figure this. What do we need to go along with it? So there's that two pieces there to the argument. As you're reading through and looking at and engaging with the homeless article again, I want you to be thinking about what strategies does Quinlan use to define homelessness. And remember, her whole point is to make you see the individual that is homeless rather than just the social problem. So how does she do that? Now, one of the things, if you want to talk about, and we should, anytime we're doing a rhetorical analysis, is we need to look at what rhetorical appeals: emotion, logic, credibility. Which of those three is the primary one? Are any of them missing? How is she persuading her audience? How is she bringing them along with her argument? That we need to look at the individual. This is not an article that's filled with facts and statistics. In fact, it's mostly just what we call in the academic world anecdotes, stories, individual examples. Very, very, I don't even know if there are, I don't think there are any statistics that say this is, the number of people who are without a home in the San Francisco area. She never does anything like that. Instead, she's very, very focused on I think the emotional aspect of it by telling these individual stories. So one question I would want you to think through and ask yourself is this effective? Would I consider this an academic approach? Because remember, in the academic world, we often prioritize logic, fact, and reason. And she isn't primarily relying on that. Are the stories she's telling logical and reasonable? Yes. But again, she's not relying on research and statistics and facts to persuade us. Instead, she's saying, look at these people, kind of pulls on your heartstrings a little bit. Is that effective? If you were going to define homelessness, how would you do it? How you define it, the rhetorical appeal you use, ethos, pathos, logos, logic, emotion, credibility, the way you do it is important. And you're going to make that decision based on what you're trying to accomplish, what your purpose, what your motivation is, and what you want your final outcome to be. So for her, she wanted people to see people, to be moved by the individuals and the people. So it made sense to use the emotion to do that, because that was her purpose, right? Now, if she was going to go before city council and propose a new measure for dealing with homelessness, for addressing homelessness, then she might, because of that audience, I don't know that an argument strictly by appeal to emotion would be the best way to go. She might start with a story as an illustration, but then would probably want to move into some facts and statistics, because that's what they're going to be concerned about at the city council level. So I'm just trying to show you how you can have a topic, and there are so many different ways to approach it. There are so many different ways to define it, depending on what your purpose and what your motivation is. So you have to be clear about that before you can communicate it to your audience. If you don't have that idea clearly in your head, then you're never going to be able to clearly communicate it to an audience, right? And that's, again, why I'm suggesting that you want to write as much as you can at this point in the process. Because the more you write, the more you're going to understand and be able to unpack your own thinking and your own ideas about it.
Read. And Dad and Mom. Mom, now you can paint my fingers.
No, I'm still talking. I got about 10 more minutes, okay? Would you like to say hi to everybody? Y'all, this is my 3-year-old daughter, Ansley. Can you say hi? Good morning?
Hi.
She's eating some peanut butter. Okay, so we've done just
my face is a mess.
It is a mess. Mommy's going to talk to her friends for a minute, okay? So I've just unpacked those 2 articles just a little bit to give you an idea. Thank you, Alicia. Just to give you an idea of how these authors were thinking about and looking at their topics. And again, if you walk away with just one thing from today, what I want you to walk away with is, why am I engaging this conversation about the topic I've chosen for my definition paper? Me being interested in it is not just enough. So if you take, for example, my paper on grit, is it something I was interested in? Yes, because I had personal experience with it in my life. That's where it stemmed from. But I also knew that there were other believers and people who were struggling with the same issue in their own relationships. And I wanted to help them see what may be missing and why they needed both grit and tenderness together to have healthy relationships. Okay. So I want you to think, when we hop off of here, when we disband in just a few minutes. Okay.
Did you
hit your hand? I'm sorry. On the chair? No. I'm very sorry. Yeah. I see where it got. Can you get a wipe? I really want you to dig down deep into yourself as far as you can think. And if somebody asks you, why are you writing about this? Why does this matter to other people? What's the significance? In a sentence, you would be able to articulate that. Okay. I would say even do that before you try and answer all the other questions in the topic proposal. Because if you can kind of get a handle on that before you do everything else, it's really going to help you flesh the rest of that out and do a good job with it. So I've been talking a lot, which, like I told you at the beginning of the semester, is not the way that I like to run class. I much prefer it when we're face-to-face and we can have dialogue and you can do some, work with people sitting next to you. But tell me what questions you have, whether it's about the topic proposal or the articles that you read for today, the paper itself that's coming up. It's not too far away now. What are your questions? Okay, so I'm going to leave you then, just 1 minute, I'm almost finished. I'm going to leave you then with a little bit of work to do. Since we would typically have another 40 minutes or so in class, let me encourage you to start working on either digging down into why is this significant, why should other people care about it, maybe doing a free write of that for about 10 minutes, and then start drafting some answers to that topic proposal.
That is from Snow. This is school.
Yeah. So if you're trying to figure out what the questions for the topic proposal are, those are listed. And then you just get back. Those are listed in Canvas in the assignment category. Look for. I'll go there and get it.
Okay.
Look in the assignment category for topic proposal. Click on it.
On a chair.
And when you click into the topic proposal for definition paper, it will tell you, it'll list out all those questions for you. Okay, so that's what I'm going to encourage you to work on for the next 30 or so minutes. I will be, let's see, I'll be available by Canvas Messenger or email if you have questions as you're working through those things, and let me know how I can help. And then I will plan to see you all, hopefully, thankfully, Lord willing, face-to-face on Thursday in class. Oh, we got a question. Okay, this is structure.
Where's my nail polish? Where's my nail polish? Where's my
I don't know why I'm typing the answer to this, Mercy. I can just answer you here in the video.
My nail polish. Thank you.
The topic proposal is structured as a series of questions. They're numbered, and I think there are 12 of them. They're numbered 1 through 12, and you literally, when you write your own responses, can just number as you're typing. Number 1, answer. Number 2, answer. And that's how I would structure it. If that didn't answer your question, Mercy, ask me again, and I'll try and be a little bit clearer. But I think that's what you were trying to get at. I'll hang out in here for a few more minutes until YouTube kicks me off, which we've probably got about 3 more minutes before they do. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them here and I'll answer them. And then after the next little bit, or after we end here, I will be available via email or Canvas Messenger to talk with you all. You're welcome, Mercy. I'm glad that helped answer your question. It's not a requirement. I think it's, Robin, to answer your question about typing the question. It's not a requirement. I find it helpful, but I know what the questions are, so I don't need you to do it. You're welcome, Robin. Got about 2 more minutes. I'm just going to hang out in case you all have some questions for me. Well, just as a side note, I think a couple of you are still here. My husband, Ben, is going to be talking in chapel today. So if you're there and it's you see the guy up front with the big, long red beard, that's my husband. So you can tell him I said hello if you go and hear him. But I think you'll be blessed by what he plans to talk about. He and I were talking through it last night, so he was sharing it with me, and I think it'll be good. All right, we are winding down here in the last few seconds, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. But if you have questions, again, email me, let me know, and I'll get back in touch. All right, y'all have a good one. Thanks so much.